What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nacho Wrestling, and whether it be WWE, AEW, New Japan, TNA, CMLL, or even your local indie promotion, wrestling is not as mainstream or as popular as it once was. This isn't to say that wrestling has died or is dying or going out of business anytime soon or anything like that. In fact, I think wrestling is in a much better spot now than what it was back in the 90s and 2000s during the Attitude Era. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's video, but before that, as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to stay up to date on all things Nacho Wrestling, and if this is your first time watching a Nacho Wrestling video, why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button and sharing this video with your friends. I think we could all agree that the last time wrestling was truly mainstream was back in the Attitude Era. Whether you grew up in that era or you learned about it later in life like myself, the Attitude Era was a time when everyone was watching professional wrestling. It was being beaten out by Madden, by baseball, by soccer, by basketball. Every other sport could not hold a candle to the viewership numbers that wrestling was bringing in, whether it was WWF or whether it was WCW. I just briefly talked about why, but the reason wrestling was so mainstream back then is because there wasn't a lot of entertainment options that combined the sporting spectacle of sports along with the storytelling aspects of regular television. And with wrestling, especially back in the 90s, you could get all of that in one 60-minute episode of Monday Night Raw. This is what made wrestling feel like the thing. Another reason that wrestling felt like the thing is because every week something was happening. Whether it was WCW or whether it was WWF, there was some sort of crazy event on every episode of Monday Night Raw, every episode of SmackDown, every episode of Nitro, not Thunder. But you may be asking yourself, why has wrestling failed today? And to that I say, calm down, wrestling hasn't failed. I kind of said that at the top of the video. I don't think it's dying, I don't think it's dead, I don't think it's anywhere near going out of business at all, because if it was, I don't think I'd be making videos on this channel very much. The entertainment world simply evolved, and wrestling had to evolve with it. This next chapter is to take a look at the idea or concept of the fact that professional wrestling has fallen off, which I tend to disagree with. I don't think wrestling has fallen off. I think it's just found its new avenue, its new market to advertise themselves to. Because yes, back in the day, wrestling was the thing. Wrestling was the preeminent program on Mondays or on Thursdays or Fridays or even Sundays for pay-per-views. But around 2010, 2015, we had so many big things come about. One of the biggest was, of course, streaming services like Netflix, like Hulu, like Amazon Prime, so on and so forth. These streaming services, and then on top of that, big title video games like GTA 5 and Halo and Call of Duty and all these other games, these big title video games allowed people to get their entertainment fix and get their action fix from different things that wasn't just professional wrestling. And this is not to say that the wrestling reach shrunk or anything like that. I think the world around wrestling just got bigger. I tend to look at Nick Khan when he had that interview with someone and talked about how WWE doesn't compete with just other wrestling companies. They compete with everything. They compete with Disney movies, Marvel movies, DC, big budget movies, big title video games, streaming services, everything like that. Hell, they even compete with someone just deciding to do nothing and take a nap. If wrestling isn't mainstream anymore, is anything really mainstream anymore? And I kind of think no, because everything has sort of equaled out. Yes, there are moments where something is super popular, but that's only for a short period of time, and if it goes on a little longer, then cool. But unlike wrestling, I think a lot of things tend to fall off, like I said, after a short period of time or a long period of time, depending on how popular the movie or the TV show or the video game is. This idea of competing with other forms of entertainment, other streaming services like that, I really thought was one of the reasons why the WWE Network works so well, is because it leaned into pop culture trends. It said, oh, you guys are sitting at home binging stuff? Well, here's a streaming service dedicated to binging professional wrestling. And not just WWE stuff. Here's WCW, here's ECW, here's Mid-Atlantic South Pro Wrestling. They had all of it on the network. And nowadays, if you're a true wrestling fan and you want to go and watch a lot of this old stuff, good luck finding it. Again, don't stress, wrestling never lost its culture. The culture around it just grew and found different avenues to succeed and different promotions to succeed in as well the more we moved into the 2010s. But the biggest question I have now is, why does wrestling feel more niche now? Before we dive headfirst into this chapter, it's important that I give you a brief definition of what niche means. Niche does not mean small or irrelevant or anything like that. Niche, and especially in this term, means specific audiences, specific groups, subcultures, subgroups, or anything like that. And the reason wrestling feels as niche as it does now is because of the amount of options there are for people to watch professional wrestling. These pop culture fanatics have other forms of entertainment to choose from. Not only do they have the option of video games or TVs and movies, but they also have other forms of wrestling to choose from. They could choose WWE and everything that falls under it, NXT, AAA, SmackDown, Raw, whatever. But they could also choose AEW, or they could choose CMLL, or for the real sickos out there, you're staying up till 3 in the morning to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling. Shout out you guys, you're awesome. Personally, I think one of the biggest reasons wrestling feels so niche now is the amount of inside baseball storytelling we get. If you don't know what that term means, it basically means showing how the sausage is made. The biggest culprit here is WWE, of course, doing a lot of things that have the terminology heel, face, work, shoot, work, shoot, all of that stuff is involved in WWE's presence now, and it sort of takes away from the spectacle of professional wrestling. Another big one for me is the internet perception of professional wrestling fans. When someone new announces themselves as a professional wrestling fan on social media, they immediately get hounded by AEW fans or WWE fans or fans of neither company, a New Japan fan, but that's very rare, that they come through and they say, you cannot watch the WWE, death to the WWE, or vice versa. It's death to AEW. Fuck AEW. And you know what? This is kind of the problem. Someone gets involved in wrestling, they say they enjoy a little something, and then they get told, no, you're not enjoying the right thing. And it immediately turns them off from all of it entirely because we're not a welcoming community. While some people may say not being mainstream has hurt the business, I think it's benefited. Companies are allowed to experiment with new storytelling ideas, new wrestlers, new ideas, and everything like that for the wrestlers, especially in WWE. While yes, they have more eyes on them than any other company out there, they still are not as mainstream as they once were, so they're allowed to do new things, throw things at the wall, see what sticks. They don't just have to go with the status quo every time. They're gonna go with what people like, and sometimes what people like is something new. Also, and this may be the most divisive point in the video, but I truly do believe that this idea of nicheness and not being as mainstream as we once were allows for professional wrestling to sort of throw more things at the wall in terms of the styles of wrestling we see on TV. AEW, by certain metrics, may be a fledgling company to some people, but to the diehard AEW fans, whether they're day one fans or whether they're newer fans, is an overall positive one these days. The same thing could be said for WWE fans. While yes, their style of wrestling is very different from what AEW does, and the people that hate WWE make sure to remind you that they hate it, but so do the AEW haters, the one that can't stand what AEW stands for. They make sure you know that the company is a pissant t-shirt company, as Triple H once said, or anything like that. Which that circles back to my point about toxicity, my certain point about how we're not a welcoming community anymore. I don't think we ever were, but now more than ever with the IWC and everything like that, it just seems like it's more toxic than ever for someone new to try and get into wrestling. The biggest benefit of not being mainstream anymore is it allows for people to find the style of wrestling they like and stick with it. Whether it be WWE or AEW or any other major promotion out there, or even your local hometown indie, you're allowed to find what you like and run with it. You don't have to post about it online, but you can if you want to. But again, you don't have to. Wrestling can be very fun when it does not try to appeal to a wider audience, an audience that is going to make fun of the wrestling. This is part of the reason why I think WWE and their behind the peak look, behind the curtains and everything like that has not really worked as well as they think it should. This chapter could be summed up in one sentence, but for gravitas' sake, I'm going to make you wait. But before we get to that sentence, why don't you guys let me know what you think about the video down in the comments below, and if you've watched this far, leave me a comment and let me know why wrestling is no longer mainstream in your eyes. The biggest culprit of chasing that mainstream clout still, even when they don't need to, is of course the WWE. They've done so much with integrating pop culture trends and everything like that into their regular weekly television that it's almost hindered them more than it has helped. This also takes away from the real fans, the fans that were there during 2011, 2012, the real shitty times of WWE. Because these fans were also not only there when WWE was at its lowest, but they were there when they hit their highest, and they were some of the happiest people to see WWE succeed and thrive. And then when WWE started not caring about the average fan, the fans that genuinely have stuck around and wanted to see a lot of these up and coming guys get the chance to succeed, it kind of hurt them. And when I say hurt them, I don't mean it hurt the WWE, although it did, but it hurt the fans emotionally to see that WWE didn't give a shit about them. Obviously, these big money companies don't really give a shit about the fans, they give a shit about the money they make. And the money they make is from us, so they care about us, but they don't really care about us, if that makes sense. You can do the math there how you feel. But this is not the worst issue. The worst issue is undoubtedly when wrestling feels embarrassed to be wrestling. When a company, let's just say WWE for example, tries to present themselves as something higher brow than professional wrestling. And no matter how hard they try to show us that they are highbrow entertainment, they aren't the traditional blood and guts sicko shit that AEW does, there's always going to be other fans of other sports like MMA or like UFC or anything like that come out of the woodwork to let us know that it's fake. By the way, Chad, we know it's fake. No need for you to leave that comment. To me, this is the biggest reason why WWE using all these other metrics and data sheets and everything like that to show how successful they are don't matter to the average fan. We don't care how many ticket sales you get. We don't care how big your gate was. We care about the wrestling. I care about the wrestling. I mean, you may not. You may be a weirdo who cares about the ticket sales and the gates, but I don't recall you working for WWE. And don't worry, I'm not going to sit here and rag on WWE the entire time because AEW is just as guilty of this. Tony Khan in his press conferences talks about how, oh, this is the biggest buy rate for Dynasty ever, blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing that Triple H does. It's just in a different font because you don't have to actually buy the pay-per-views from WWE. You just have to be subscribed to ESPN. Another thing is that AEW tends to lean a little more too far in the opposite end of the spectrum, going so far with the sport and real looking feel of it all that some casual fans of wrestling who try to get into AEW are turned off by it by the gruesome and sick looking bumps. I've talked about this a little bit, but short boom periods and highest grossing pay-per-views and everything like that don't really matter to the overall success of a company, especially when, case in point with WWE again, yeah, they were popular during 2023 and all of 2024, but they lost a lot of steam in late 2025 and here at the top of 2026. It is when those numbers stay consistent for a longer period of time, whether that be a year, 2 years, or 3 years plus, that's when you can say, hey, we're in a new boom period of professional wrestling. That's why I think this past year and so far this beginning of 2026 for AEW has been really successful for them. Do they have a $1 billion deal with Netflix and Peacock and Saudi Arabia government and everything like that, and ad deals with C4 Energy and Slim Jim and Fireball? No, they don't, but they have been consistently rising in their ratings, in their reviews, and everything like that. People are slowly enjoying AEW again, and it's bringing back a feeling of 2019-2020 AEW. They also have one of the most passionate fan bases in the business today. Some would say a little too passionate, and I will leave that to you guys to decide civilly in the comments below. Let me know if you think AEW's sicko fan base is a little too sick. I think the biggest point and the biggest reason to show that being this company that has all these sponsorship deals, has all these ad revenue deals and everything like that, and has more eyes on their product, does not instantly mean you're the better company. Case in point, WWE did not win every single award from ESPN for the end of year awards for wrestling. AEW got their flowers from the company that shows WWE pay-per-views. And then on top of that, they damn near swept WWE for the Sports Illustrated Awards. And, you know, people may not give a shit about that, and I understand, but at the same time, why don't you give a shit? I mean, it's the end of year awards. They're kind of important. Again, I'm not trying to clown completely on WWE or anything like that. They have their true diehard fans as well, and they allow WWE wrestlers to move on to bigger and better things post-career. Look at Roman Reigns, look at John Cena, inevitably look at what they'll do with Rhea Ripley. All these guys and girls are cross-promotional talents. They can be used in big ways other than just wrestling. Modern success does not look like a dominant 2-year run at the top of the business. Modern success looks more like a moderate, steady growth and development over a decade plus. That is why I genuinely think New Japan is arguably one of the best promotions out there in the entire world. Of course, like every wrestling promotion, they've had their spikes, they've had their dips and everything like that. After 2016, 2017, they were hot. People were watching. People got invested for a few people and then stayed for everyone else. And so far, ever since 2016, 2017, I can say that I've been watching New Japan pretty consistently. I lost a little bit of steam in 2024, 2025, but my 2026 New Year's resolution was always to watch New Japan. The last thing I want to note about New Japan real quick is that one of the best things they did, not only for smaller audiences, but for a wider one, is bringing back the old IWGP V4 heavyweight title. A title that everybody loves. Whether you're a casual wrestling fan or whether you're a diehard wrestling fan, that belt is one of the best belts in professional wrestling. So to bring back that glory era of 2017, 2018 New Japan was a great idea on their part. So wrestling may not be mainstream anymore. It may not be the most popular thing on the block or to talk about at the water cooler, but it's still popular. It's still gonna be everlasting. Like I said many times throughout the video, it's not dying, nor is it going to die anytime soon. It just means that wrestling is no longer for everyone. Hell, maybe it never was. But it doesn't have to be for everyone. You think everyone likes professional football? You think everyone likes basketball? No. There are detractors to everything. There are going to be haters of everything. That's just common human nature. But the strengths for wrestling lie in its variety, its longevity, its stability, and everything like that. And most importantly, its sense of community. Wrestling allows for anyone and everyone to sit down, watch, without having to be explained an extensive rule list by your friends. You just need to know, hey, he's a good guy, she's a bad guy. They don't like each other, they're fighting. That's it. Simple as that. And on top of that, they get to be introduced to a whole new cast and crew of characters. Whether it be the hard, gritty characters of AEW or the more colorful and vibrant characters of WWE. To summarize all of this in one phrase is to say that wrestling does not need to try and be something it isn't. It just needs to keep being itself, and fans, whether new, old, or returning, are always going to find their way to whatever they want to watch. Well, that is it for today's video. Let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments below. Do you think wrestling is as mainstream as it once was, or has it lost a little bit of steam? Like I said, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought about the video as well. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to stay up to date on all things Nacho Wrestling, and I will see you guys next time.